Some things are easier if you don't try, like getting rid of hiccups, or remembering something that slipped your mind, or falling in love. Other things will only happen if you try, and try very hard for a long time, like getting an education, or building for yourself a solid means of making a living. And the same is true for whole nations. Some things develop without a national plan, like a unique culture or religion. But other things will only happen when a nation tries. In other words, when its political and business and community leaders all rally together to make a thing happen and keep trying until it happens. As with individuals, education is something countries only achieve by trying. By funding teacher training colleges, building schools in every town, and making school compulsory. And another thing that a nation can only make happen by trying is building an economy that will allow its whole population to make a decent living. But that basic fact of history was erased from the memory of most countries by the end of the last century. And today, most people in rich countries believe their nation's wealth was built without any organized national effort or plan. And many people in poor countries believe they're poor because their nations tried too hard or planned too much. This epic global misunderstanding was promoted by several networks of far-sighted wealthy businessmen and right-wing ideologues over a 50-year-long campaign to convince the nations of the world to stop trying. Why would anyone want to do this? Well, for rich people and even many upper middle class professionals, there has always been a very real trade-off between trying to develop one's whole nation over the long run versus trying to get rich quick for yourself in the short run. Building up a nation's economy requires long-term and risky national investments that sacrifice quick gains for the rich in the short run in favor of much bigger payoffs for everyone, including the rich, over the long run. In the 20th century, many nations all around the world tried hard to build up their economies so that all their people could make a good living. But rich people in almost every country fought this tooth and nail. But as the world blew up last century, starting with World War I, the rich lost that struggle. And every nation that was truly independent threw itself into the work of trying to build up an economy for itself that could make a good living for all of its people. Once they succeeded, however, those activist networks of rich people and right-wing ideologues all over the world went right back to work trying to convince their countries to stop trying and to merely pursue short-term gains again. Well, they endowed economics professorships for their leading thinkers. They formed think tanks to influence politicians and funded those politicians' campaigns. They bought newspapers and sponsored radio and television shows and eventually started creating entire radio and television networks of their own. And so by the 1980s, America and Great Britain were the first two countries to fall once again for the idea that countries must never try. And then one by one, more and more countries all over the world also fell, as newly minted wealthy elites fought to maximize their short-term wealth instead of the long-term health of their nations. Because they won that struggle, today living standards for billions of people are stagnating. In some countries like the United States and Britain, we're going backwards. American lifespans are getting shorter, and women are now more likely to die in childbirth than they were last decade. Around the world, 200 million people are hungry in India, another 200 million in Africa, and Russia's bottom 100 million find that their lives too are shorter today than they were in the last years of the Soviet Union. So what is the world supposed to do about all of this? Well, it's time to start trying again. Unfortunately, our nations have had any understanding of what trying as a nation looks like removed from our historical memories. That's why almost the only political parties who have a plan to try are obsessed solely with trying to deport immigrants, trying to roll back the gains of women and minorities, or trying to go to war with the country next door or across the planet. It's our job now to remember what it looks like to try to build up your own country's economy and means of making a living, and to figure out how to sell that idea to our people. If you're not interested in that because the brainwashing just worked really well on you and you think that the economics should be left exclusively to the private sector or that it's just not interesting, then get ready for the anti-immigrant parties, the war parties, the parties of the past to become the parties of the present and the future. Of course, this is already happening. And no, the answer isn't to rebuild a 1950s smokestack economy and replicate it all over the world. The work of trying to build up a new economy in the 21st century means building a 100% sustainable economy. It means building a highly automated economy where the people of Earth can make a living and still have time left over to raise their families, to create, and to be truly human again. Over the past couple hundred years, nations intentionally building up their economies became common and natural. This, in fact, is what defines the modern era. The countries that have tried or kept on trying are today the most successful in the world. Germany, Switzerland, South Korea, China, and many others. Countries have tried and succeeded to build up their economies under every conceivable political and economic system. The United States, as a liberal capitalist democracy, set perhaps the world's all-time record for how much can be accomplished by trying when it built up its economy around World War II. But again, the point is not to repeat the past. Our job is to build a new, unprecedented future and to realize the dream that humanity has been dreaming for thousands of years of a world where everyone has a way to make a living that's sustainable with dignity and where everyone on Earth never even has to think about access to healthcare or education, let alone clean water or food. If you want to hear more about how countries have tried and succeeded to build their economies, then please subscribe to this channel, Left Right Forward, on YouTube, or like this video and our page on Facebook. It took 50 years to brainwash the world out of trying. It's going to take a lot more than a few videos to get the world to start again, but with your help, at least it will be a start.